showing as a blank gray screen on yours?
It is.
All right, hopefully we've got audio also.
Hi, I'm Dan Waticha, Hastings City Administrator, and I am pleased to introduce employees of the City of Hastings who were hired in 2020, as well as recognize those who were promoted within this past year. We are fortunate to have their service and their expertise on staff, and we wish we could recognize them in person as we typically do. Since we cannot, please join me in celebrating their accomplishments by video. Thank you to Hastings Community Television, HCTV, for producing this recognition. The following staff members joined the City of Hastings this past year. Lindsay Anderson began employment with the city in late August as a City Hall Administrative Assistant. In addition to her front desk duties, she assists accounts payable and finance. Before that, she served for nearly a year as an AmeriCorps service team member with the Minnesota Green Corps. Through this service, she worked with the city's recycling and composting practices and held sustainability workshops for Hastings residents. She partnered with Dakota County and numerous community groups throughout her service to promote waste reduction. Ben Bannett, a new public works operator, comes to us from working most recently at Nature's Quest Landscaping, where he was part of a team that performed landscape construction projects and property beautification work. Ben has had a healthy dose of exposure to a variety of maintenance and operations work through his first year on the job. Ben lives in town and enjoys spending time with his family and playing hockey. Robert Clark, also a public works operator, joined the team in November. Robert has a seasoned background in fluid pumping equipment, most recently with his work at W.W. Getch Associates of Edina. He also has experience with heavy equipment and commercial truck driving operations. Although Robert and his family now live in Hastings, he originally hails from Lakeville and served in the U.S. Marine Corps in the late 2000s before entering the domestic workforce. Chris Idemiller joined our team in September after spending more than 13 years working in finance at the City of St. Paul. While there, he managed the Central Accounting Division and assisted in compiling the annual budget. Chris is a certified public accountant and has his master's degree in public administration from the University of South Dakota. He and his wife have 2 sons, and Chris has been actively involved as a coach for youth baseball and basketball. Officer Ryan Haight is a Savage, Minnesota native. He graduated from Prior Lake Savage High School in 2015 and completed his bachelor's degree in law enforcement at the University of Minnesota Mankato in 2019. Ryan worked as a community service officer in Mankato, a jailer in Blue Earth County, and most recently did contracted animal control for the city of Burnsville. Ryan enjoys working out, motorcycling, fishing, hiking, and sailing. Ryan began his duties in January of 2020. Officer Matthew Harity is a Minneapolis native and formerly a Minneapolis police officer assigned to the 2nd Precinct. He completed his associate's degree at Inver Hills Community College in 2013 and his bachelor's degree in law enforcement at Metro State University. In his free time, Matt enjoys playing hockey, camping, and spending time with his family. He joined the police department in October. Grace Holm was hired in September of 2020 and began her training to become a paid-on-call firefighter EMT. This training will be completed in August of 2021. We look forward to her contributions to the department. Officer Zachary Nakamas is a Lakeville native. Zach completed his bachelor's degree at Mankato State and police skills at Hibbing in 2019. He worked as a campus security officer at MSU and filled in as a community service officer as well. Zach enjoys ice fishing and spending time with friends and family. He joined the police department in January of last year. TJ Lucas is the city's forester as well as a parks keeper. Primarily, TJ is tasked with maintaining Hastings' urban forest, including conducting tree inventory, completing tree trimming and pruning, tree removals, new tree plantings, preventing tree diseases, and working very closely with Hastings residents on all things tree-related. As a parks keeper, he helps complete many of the routine maintenance and project tasks for the Hastings Parks and Trail system. TJ brings positive energy to our department, is consistently willing to help out with any project or task, and has the desire to learn as much as he can about all of Hastings. He is a great asset to our team, and we have enjoyed getting to know him very much. Eric Moss joined the city as Economic Development Coordinator in November after spending 7 years as a consultant at WSB, where he served a variety of local cities. He assists in shaping economic growth in Hastings by working with the development community, local businesses, HEDRA, and the City Council. Eric received his bachelor's and master's degrees in landscape architecture from the University of Minnesota, where he now volunteers for the Alumni Association. Additionally, Eric serves on the board of directors for the Economic Development Association of Minnesota. Eric and his fiancée Erin live in Minneapolis with their cat Oliver, and they look forward to purchasing their first home this year. Cody Matheson started his role as principal engineer in mid-November after a 4-year stint with Wink Associates. Cody grew up at the opposite corner of the metro area in Delano, which is also the place he got his first taste of the world of municipal infrastructure by serving as a civil engineering intern. From there, Cody pursued and received a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the University of Minnesota. He recently passed the professional engineering licensing exam, which is no small feat. Cody has a passion for the game of baseball, playing through his high school years and also in the Minnesota Town Ball circuit for a few years thereafter. Cody and his wife currently live in St. Louis Park, but have taken interest in moving to the Eastern Metro sometime in the near future. Caitlin Kiki Ratke was hired in September and is a recent Bemidji State graduate. Kiki began her training to become a paid-on-call firefighter EMT and will complete her training in August. We look forward to her contributions to the department. Blaine Relway also was hired in September and began his training to become a paid-on-call firefighter EMT. We look forward to his contributions to the department. Officer Chad Schlichty is a Cottage Grove native who worked as a deputy sheriff in Martin County before joining the Hastings Police Department in late December 2019. Chad served as a police officer with the St. James Police Department from 2015 to 2018 before joining Martin County. He completed his bachelor's degree at Mankato State in 2013 and the skills portion at Hibbing in 2014. He enjoys hunting, fishing, sports, and concerts. Josh Saranek began his role as public works operator at the very tail end of 2019, but we haven't had a formal opportunity to introduce him until now. Prior to joining the city, Josh worked for Castle Rock Contracting and Tree. Throughout his first year with us, Josh has gained experience in a wide array of operations duties, and we're excited for him to continue to grow and expand his experience. Josh lives near town, is an avid hunter and fisherman, taking to the fields and lakes whenever he gets the chance. And he recently got engaged. Congratulations, Josh. Dawn Skelly is our communications coordinator and came to the city of Hastings in September from the city of Arden Hills, where she held a similar role for the past 3 years. Prior to working in Arden Hills, Dawn was the director of marketing and communications for Minneapolis Community and Technical College. She has a bachelor's degree in journalism and a master's degree in public affairs from the Humphrey School. Dawn and her husband Joe have 2 teenage children and a rescue dog. Dawn enjoys hiking, reading, traveling, and spending time with family. Jalen Snedeker was hired in September and is a graduate of the University of Minnesota in Duluth. Jalen is in training to become a paid-on-call firefighter EMT. This training will be completed in August. We look forward to his contributions to the department. Canine Sunny, a 1-year-old Hungarian-born German Shepherd, came to us in March. The purchase was made possible through a private donation after our former canine, Ozzy, was retired. Sunny and his partner Dan Vomastek began the Minneapolis Canine Academy on March 9 and graduated on May 28th. Kayla Tesh was hired in September and is training to become a paid-on-call firefighter EMT in August. We look forward to Kayla's contributions to the department. Officer Peyton Walzer is a Fairmont, Minnesota native who attended Winona State University and studied abroad in Spain during the summer of 2018. Peyton graduated with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and completed her skills portion of training at Rochester Community and Technical College. She formerly worked for Winona Family and Children's Center and for Olmsted County Sheriff's Office. Peyton enjoys biking, rollerblading, reading, traveling, cooking, and spending time with her family. She joined the police department in November. We are fortunate to welcome these hires to our city. I also want to take a few minutes to recognize those employees who were promoted this past year. Sam Boyk joined the police department in 2018 after serving 7 years as a police officer in Huron, South Dakota. He was promoted to sergeant this past year, replacing Sergeant Mike Munson, who retired in June. Sergeant Boyk has been working night watch in the patrol division. Sam has a bachelor's degree in political science from Mankato State University, and he enjoys hunting, fishing, and spending time with his wife and newborn son. Congratulations, Sergeant Boyk. Ryan Klein was also promoted to the rank of sergeant with the Hastings Police Department in March. Sergeant Klein was formerly our school resource officer and filled the vacancy created by Sergeant James Galland, who retired. He joined the department in 2012 and has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the University of St. Thomas. Ryan enjoys bike riding and other outdoor activities with his wife and 2 daughters. Congratulations, Sergeant Klein. John Townsend, a 20-year veteran of the fire department, was promoted from assistant chief to fire chief this past year. While serving as the acting fire chief for a year, John took on additional duties of maintaining leadership, updating procedures, and promoting a positive culture for the department. In October, he was promoted to fire chief, and we look forward to him continuing the good work he has been putting in place. John began his career as a paid-on-call firefighter EMT for Hastings over 2 decades. In 2007, he was hired on full-time as our assistant chief and fire marshal. Thank you, John, for continuing your leadership and service to the city of Hastings. Officer Dan Vomastek took on additional duties this year with a passion to train dogs. Dan was selected to be our new K-9 officer in February and paired with his new K-9 partner, Sonny. They began the Minneapolis K-9 Academy on March 9th and graduated on May 28th, completing all certification requirements specified by the United States Police K-9 Association, USPCA. This arduous training consists of searching, apprehension, and narcotics detection in a myriad of conditions. To maintain certification, they train together monthly with other K-9 teams in the region and recertify annually. Dan joined the Hastings Police Department in November of 2018. He is a Cottage Grove native and a graduate of the University of Minnesota Duluth with a bachelor's degree in criminology and an associate's degree in law enforcement. Officer Jake Willers replaced Ryan Klein as our new school resource officer. Jake joined the Hastings Police Department in October of 2018 after serving as a police officer in Hutchinson since 2015. He is a graduate of Mankato State University, majoring in law enforcement with a minor in psychology. Officer Willers has vested interest in mental health, including trauma, informed care dealing with the adolescent brain, which is an excellent quality to have in this position. Jake recently completed a 40-hour SRO training course sponsored by the National School Resource Officers Association, NASRO. We are fortunate to have the knowledge and the dedication of these employees, and we look forward to their continued contributions to our community. This concludes our recognition for 2020. Thank you for joining me in welcoming our new employees and in congratulating those who have earned promotions this past year.
Congratulations to everyone and welcome. And congrats to the promotions for the police officers. Okay, council members, are there any corrections to the minutes from the workshop and the regular meeting of January 4th? Seeing none, they are approved. For public comments, we have options for comments to be emailed prior to the meeting, as well as an interactive feature during the meeting. For the emailed comments, they have been forwarded to the city council and their receipt is acknowledged. Please recognize that items not on the agenda will not be discussed this evening. We are, excuse me, we ask that the attendees use the raised hand feature, and we will invite you in to speak one at a time. I also want to remind everyone that the public comment period is not intended for an extended dialogue. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the council at this time? I do see a raised hand. Ms. Myers, you'd like to come in? Whoops.
Okay, we brought Ms. Myers into the meeting. Ms. Myers, if you would unmute your microphone, you can address the council.
Oh, all right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Welcome.
I am here with a couple of other people from my townhouse association. We're inquiring about the association behind us on Featherstone Oaks.
Ms. Myers, can I interrupt you, please? Would you please
Yes.
state your address?
248 Glenlue Way.
Okay.
And
Go
the
ahead.
property behind us is on Featherstone or Summit Point Drive in the Association of Featherstone Oaks, owned by Wiechmann's.
Okay.
And we are just concerned about what was said in the minutes about the drainage problem, or what they were going to do to change or the drainage from their association. We cannot handle any more drainage onto our properties. Both properties are back to back, and there's not much yard back there. And every time there's a hard rain, we get a flood in our backyard. So if they're changing anything on that property, we are opposed to it. That's if it's going to increase the water flowing into us. I talked to John Heinzman.
Yes.
Heinzman, yeah, I talked to him about it. He really didn't know what it was either. And so we're just questioning why they asked for this, to discuss the vacation of a drainage assessment in the southeast portion.
And Mayor and Ms. Myers, if I could offer some clarification here. I think Ms. Myers is seeking to take her comments during the public hearing for the vacation of easement. I did speak with her
Yes,
late last week, so I think her comments are related to that.
yes.
Okay, so we'll bring you back. You can speak during the public hearing on that item.
Okay,
Okay?
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Let me just look to see if there's any. I see no one else for comments. So council item, any council items to be considered? I'd like to have a moment of silence for the paramedic Toby Rowan, who died in the line of duty on January 7th. Mr. Rowan was a previously employed at the Hastings Fire Department. Thank you. Council, I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda. Councilmember Fulch,
So moved.
Councilmember Brox.
Second.
Okay. Council, do you have any new discussion on? Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Lightfoot,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund.
Yes.
Councilmember Brox,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And that motion prevails. Tonight, we are here to authorize a signature for settlement agreement with Hastings Commons LLC. For this item, we will have an introduction by City Attorney Dan Flegel.
Thank you, Your Honor, and Council, you're asked tonight to consider and approve the settlement agreement that would resolve the land use lawsuit brought by the plaintiffs Hastings Commons and Summit Management that has been pending since about late 2019. As I believe the City Council is aware, this claim was based on the plaintiff's belief that the city wrongfully denied their application to construct a motor coach facility from their property that's located generally on the southern portion of Vermillion Street and which is zoned within the C2 commercial zoning district. If approved, the settlement agreement would obligate the city to consider the zoning amendment that is on the agenda later tonight. And that amendment would amend the C2 district regulations and other portions of the city code to effectively allow a motor coach commerce facility, as that would be defined in the ordinance, to be operated as an interim use within the C2 zoning district. The proposed ordinance amendment contains a number of regulations that would govern the use of the property for these purposes, including the limits on duration of stays, use of personal property that can be associated with the sites, noise, and many other matters. As an interim use, the ability of a property owner to use their property is limited in the permit itself to a certain designated time or a number of years. If the settlement is approved, the plaintiffs would then submit an application for the interim use permit. This is assuming the ordinance would also be approved for the interim use permit in the manner required by the ordinances, and the City Council would then consider that application at a later meeting. As part of that application and review process, a building permit, inspection, and SAC and WAC fees would need to be paid to the extent that they don't have credits for pre-existing uses on the property. Also, some additional review of the site plan would be completed, although much of that has already been done to date by staff. If the application was then approved in the future, the interim use permit would include specified terms that are contained in the settlement agreement document, and those would include the types, size, and age of the units that could be brought into the facility, the length of time that any unit can remain on the property to prevent any permanent occupancy by occupants. The duration of the interim use permit would be 2 10-year terms, with the owner being able to continue on into the second term as long as they comply with the conditions of the interim use permit. Rules of operation for this facility have really been negotiated through staff to this date and are part of the settlement agreement. And then there's also a requirement for an on-site manager of the property that would be there in conjunction with the adjacent property also owned by the same individuals. So long as those operations on the site would comply with the interim use permit, then that use could be continued for the entire 20-year duration. But if there were any violations of the interim use permit that are not cured as part of the process that's contained in the settlement agreement and the ordinances, then the city could compel the closure or the terminations to operate. I think we all would agree that this is probably not a use that the city council or city staff had envisioned for this property. But due to the language that did exist in the C2 zoning district ordinance at the time of the application in 2019, all of myself, City Attorney George Hoff, who's the city's litigation counsel, and city staff that have been involved are recommending that the city council approve this settlement agreement and later the proposed ordinance amendment that would follow on the agenda. I can stand for any questions, or if none, the mayor could consider an appropriate motion to approve, hopefully. A simple majority vote of the city council is required to pass the action. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Any discussion, council? Okay, council, accept a motion to approve the settlement agreement with the Hastings Commons LLC.
So moved, Your Honor.
Councilmember Fulch
I'll second
and Councilmember Fox. Any additional new discussion? Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch.
Yes.
Councilmember Fox.
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld.
Yes.
Councilmember Lund. Councilmember Lund. Councilmember Brock.
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And that motion prevails. Tonight, we do have a public hearing, the amendment of City Code Chapter 50, General Provisions. For this item, we will have an introduction by the City Parks and Recs Director, Chris Jenkins, and by Dave Magnuson from Dakota County, followed by a public hearing and action by the council. Welcome, Mr. Magnuson, and welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll keep the introduction pretty quick here. What we're looking for tonight is a ordinance amendment that is required by Dakota County, which is also then required by the state of Minnesota to comply with waste abatement goals for the state and the county as well. So all the cities within Dakota County must modify ordinances to ensure that they comply with Dakota County Ordinance 110. And city staff, as well as Dakota County staff, as well as our city attorney, have reviewed all of Hastings' applicable ordinances and drafted revisions to those ordinances, which are also included in the packet. And here with us tonight to provide a little bit more detailed information in a presentation, Mr. Dave Magnuson from Dakota County, and I'll turn it over to him at this time and then wrap it up in the end.
Thank you, Chris. Is my PowerPoint going to pop up or? Oh, there.
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. So, Madam Mayor, council members, thank you for having us. My name is Dave Magnuson. I'm the Waste Regulation Supervisor at Dakota County. On the call with me is John Buck, my Senior Environmental Specialist, who is the lead in working with the cities on solid waste and recycling issues. As Chris said, we're invited to give a quick summary of the solid waste ordinance amendments that affect the municipalities. I do want to give a little bit more background than Chris just gave you. Minnesota law requires the county to write a solid waste master plan. That plan implements the MPCA's Metro Solid Waste Policy Plan. The plan lays out many requirements for solid waste management. One of the big requirements that you might have heard of is the county must achieve a 75% recycling goal by 2030. It's coming up quick. Many of the master plan strategies and tactics have a regulatory component, and those were incorporated into the solid waste ordinance in last November. Actually, November 2019. Time really flies here. Okay. So on the screen here are the new requirements that all entities in the county must comply with, not just the cities. So this is the anybody who is basically not a household, commercial, schools, churches, cities. The requirement is that a recycling container is paired with every solid waste trash container. People need both of these options so that when they have solid waste to dispose of in their hands, they have a choice between recycling and disposal. There are standard labeling guidelines now. These are put in place to send a clear message and a consistent message to all the users. So if you're looking at a trash can in Hastings or looking at a trash can in Apple Valley, it says the same thing on it. All employees need to educate their, all employers, need to educate their employees annually on proper recycling. And that even includes Dakota County. We have to follow this rule ourselves. And reporting are required annually by commercial, schools, churches, all of that. For the cities, you already have a grant with the county, so we're modifying your grant report so that you don't have to do more than one. Next slide, please. So these are specific to municipalities. Our new or I should say modified ordinance 110 asks that the cities modify your ordinance by the end of 2020. So we're a little late, but we did grant an extension to Hastings for more time. The ordinance needs to be consistent with ordinance 110. An example I'd like to throw out is a lot of cities have an ordinance that says recycling is every other week. Our new ordinance has a weekly recycling requirement coming up next year. And so it's important that the ordinances match and somebody doesn't have two different laws they have to comply with. City enforcement is required with the ordinance amendment. However, at this point, a complaint-based system is adequate to meet that requirement. You are being asked to add multifamily recycling requirements, which follow the same best management practices we discussed prior: paired containers, labeling standards, education, things like that. And then finally, there's a large event venue recycling requirement, and that's only for venues that prepare food. The existing requirements have not changed, supporting the Dakota County Solid Waste Master Plan, ensuring opportunities to recycle exist for all residents and businesses, delivering our standard message. That stuff was in the ordinance and stays in the ordinance. Next slide, please. The county does have resources available to assist the cities. We've been working with the city closely. John Buck's been doing that extensively, providing guidance, examples, links to other city code. We've been reviewing your code, giving feedback. We are available for regulatory assistance if needed. Most cities have a lot of experience in enforcing your own code, so I don't know if you're going to need any help from us, but it'll be available if you need it. And then, of course, present to city councils if requested, as you did. We do have the community abatement grant that's continuing. That's not going to end. That money is available to use for developing the code, strengthening your compliance and education tools, purchasing containers and other infrastructure. But the grant does not cover any enforcement activity that you do under your new code. In 2020, the Hastings share of the grant was $39,000. And of course, the county is going to continue our recycling programs that we've always had in place for support and education of the commercial, residential, and multifamily. Please. So separate from the ordinance, I was asked to touch briefly on the processing subsidy that Hastings and Farmington requested the county add. That budget was approved by the county board at $25 a ton. That's slightly less than what the city asked for, $30 a ton, but it was approved at $25 a ton. There will need to be a grant agreement put in place before those monies are available. I think we'll be reaching out to you fairly shortly to start that process. If your average is about 5,300 tons a year, if that continues to go to Red Wing, then that subsidy would be right around that $132,000 a year. Slide, please. That's everything I have prepared. Happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Magnuson.
Yes.
At this point, we will open the public hearing. There is a raised hand feature, and they will be invited to speak one at a time. Let's just go in. I see no raised hands. I'm opening the public hearing. If anybody would wish to speak on this at this point, now is your time. Still no raised hands. So at this point, we will close the public hearing. Any council discussion? Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. A question for Dave on reading through this. There's a few confusing slides. It starts at saying it's a state to county to cities and that we have to follow, change our ordinance for your ordinance. But it also says it's up to us to enforce it. It's not required, it's complaint based. But I've seen a few things in there on large venues. How much will this cost is it our job as a city to enforce it on a venue, a private business, to do organics for that place? Will they be required to offer organics if they're a venue above 350, I think is what I read? And if so, is it up to the city then to go enforce that to make sure it's being done to meet these, or to meet the ordinance? That's my first question.
Mayor, council member. So, yeah, I'm sorry if it was confusing. So the city has to do the enforcement of the multifamily, and you have to put in your code that large event venues with back of house organics have recycling. So the city will not be required to enforce the ordinance component. They'll be required to enforce the recycling component of that. And the reason we put that on the cities is that in our research, almost all the large event venues were owned by cities. And it would be an easy thing to put into your agreements that you have with the vendors who are renting them. But the organics, no, that is my responsibility to enforce.
So to confirm, if we change our ordinance to match what the county's asking us to do or requiring us to do, if it's a private business that offers an event and it has over the 350, I think is what I read, is it our job to make sure that business knows that they're offering an organic option for supplies and food and the recycling side? I'm just trying to look out for the businesses here saying, how much is this going to cost our local businesses if there's no funding source for them, as if it's a requirement from the state down to the county to the city?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, council member. So the cost part of it, we don't know. That's going to be obviously a market-driven item. The vendor will have to hire a hauler who will haul away the organics. So what does the hauler charge? What does the facility charge to manage that? City does not have to enforce the organics component of that. What the city has to do is ensure that a large event venue that meets the definition has recycling. That would be your component. So if they didn't have the recycling bins, they didn't have the labeled recycling bins, that would be your responsibility. The organics, you could walk in and say, call me up and say, Dave, they don't have organics, and I would take care of it, or you could not do that. That would be my job, to make sure the organics itself is being recycled. The cost, this is a private, the solid waste industry in Dakota County, for the most part, is private. Hastings has organized collection for residential. Farmington has organized collection. The rest is run by the private sector.
And what if we don't adopt the ordinance that the county's I guess I'm confused why the county requires us to do it if it's a county ordinance. Why wouldn't we just make it a county-wide program and they take care of the enforcement and education and so forth? Are we doing it as a partnership that you're asking us to do this? Or again, I go down to, we're going to get a phone call from a large venue saying, what did you approve on January 19th that I have to now do? And I just want to make sure that we're being upfront with what we're getting ready to approve here.
Madam Mayor, council member. Well, I mean, to be blunt, if you don't approve it, you'd be violating the Dakota County ordinance. That the county board has already passed that, so it's a requirement. The city itself does not have to enforce the organics component. You have to enforce the recycling component. If you have a venue that in your city that is not owned by the city itself, they probably get a license from you to operate. that would be the place to put the requirement in that license. But yeah, there is a role for the city. You mentioned partnership. I certainly see this as a partnership. The state has mandated we meet a 75% recycling goal by 2030. We've been at around 50 to 52% for 20 years. Okay, the status quo doesn't work. That's why we've branched out into this regulatory component. I'll tell you that the county board was not excited about this. they didn't sit around saying, Dave, bring me some rules we can enforce. What they did was they said, oh, the state's requiring us to do this? And yeah, the state is. We had a lot of latitude in how we incorporated it, but the state is requiring us to do this. So the resources I mentioned on the slide of where we can assist with, you'll still get our grants for the education component. And the infrastructure component for equipment, containers, things, labels, things like that. If you need any assistance with enforcement from technical assistance, we can do that too. But the actual enforcement, you'll have to do.
Your Honor, I have one more question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Dave, you mentioned the state has got a goal of 75%. And you say the county at the 50%, or is the state at 50%? Is Dakota, full disclosure here, I do recycling and organics at my day job. So I know what it costs. And I'm worried about a business getting told you have to do that because it's going to be at a cost to them. It's that simple. It's going to cost more money. It's the right thing to do. And I think I want to get to the end game with you. I just want to make sure, and we got a date that the state wants to get there. I want to make sure everybody in the state is doing their due diligence. So not Dakota County's carrying the load here. We can be leaders and say we're doing it, but I don't know if I was ready to go to regulatory yet without a little more effort into the education side of it and see if we can get a little bit closer that way. But those are kind of my comments. I'll leave it at that. I'd like to listen to my colleagues about this, but I have a little bit of concern with this. I could see where the county board struggled with this one because I'm struggling myself on this too. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Lund.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dave, I just have a question on point of clarification on some of the terms here. So if we go down to apologize, I lost my spot here. So the large events area that we were talking about just a little bit ago, it says public gathering of at least 300 people. I think that's what Councilmember Vaughn was speaking about just a moment ago. But can you? I know we have some examples of that you gave to us, but could you elaborate a little bit on that? Because is this to what extent does this impact? I guess is this festivals only, or can this be something that is a private event that is on public space, or what kind of tell that a little bit, because I think it is a little bit confusing.
Mayor, council member, the key here, yeah, it could be anything. It could be a festival, it could be a parade, could be a soccer tournament. Key here is they have to have back of house organics. They have to be preparing food. Preparing food, this doesn't comply to them. So we're not asking, even if somebody sells food, if they bring it in already prepared, it doesn't apply to them. So what we're after is a kitchen environment that has food waste, but then that has to be diverted. Once the food has been served, no diversion requirement whatsoever. An entity can choose to do it, but there's just so much contamination on that level once it's been served that it just doesn't work. But when it's under the control of the kitchen or whatever the equivalent of the kitchen is, they have a lot of control over the organic waste that they're producing, and then it's easy to divert. I'm not going to say it doesn't cost money, because it does. There's no scenario, none whatsoever, where we move from 52% to 75% and don't spend more money. Because if that scenario existed, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We would already be there. John, I noticed John Buck has his hand up, and he's kind of my expert here. I'm wondering if you wanted to weigh in on this, John. Is that jump
Thank
in?
you.
Or?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Dave. Madam
He
Mayor.
can fix whatever I said that was wrong. So.
Well, yeah, I think I still had that up. I wanted to hope to clarify the organics piece of it, and I think we're getting there. But it's the organics. That word is specific just to that definition of what a large event venue with organics is, and that's that 300 people or more, a public gathering that generates that back of house organics. And of course has to generate or contract to service a certain level of waste. But that was what I had my hand raised for. To clarify that.
Thanks, John.
Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. I guess I have a question for staff then, and perhaps this is for Dan. I was wondering, so if we're going to be putting into effect this ordinance, how long do you all have until you have to start actually doing enforcement? And how is it that you're planning to comply if it's the city that has to do this function? So if, you know, I'd really like to understand what's the burden that's being placed on our staff.
Unfortunately, you beat me to the same question I've got.
Oh, good. Okay.
So I don't have an answer. From emails I saw among county and city staff just a couple of weeks ago, I was of the impression, maybe it's this confusion about organics versus recycling, but I was of the impression that the administration of this, the handling of some required reporting, the enforcement was all on the county. So I've got the same question with where do we go from here? From a operational standpoint, I've got the same question.
And Councilmember Fox.
Thank you, Your Honor. As a small business owner who has actually worked through the county for grants and recycling opportunities like this, I just wanted, as a point of information, I just wanted to mention that the educational experiences really mitigate the regulatory side of it. They're really exceptional resources and they're really easy to use. And then as a question, perhaps for John, is part of the city's responsibility the recycling, since that's generally where we're going with this, the public outside of a kitchen experience event, would that be like us providing vessels for recycling or organics material versus enforcing like pickup? Is that what we're talking about perhaps?
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council Member, the city's requirements under the generator side would be, yes, if you're putting on a function or even at city offices, you are required to follow the commercial generator requirements, which is ensure that the designated list of recyclable materials is being collected, and ensure that you have adequate capacity to collect the the recyclables that are generated. So if Dave's example where someone using one of your facilities or at your event has a bottle or some recyclable material, and they come to a waste receptacle, again, there needs to be that paired container so that they have the option to recycle if they want to. And again, you have to have adequate capacity. So if the recycling bin is overflowing and they have no choice but to throw it in the trash, that wouldn't meet the ordinance. So you would need to, address that. And it's not something that, the county or the city starts, enforcing those sorts of requirements on multifamily or the large event venues. It's not something where I ever envision you see that and you give them a citation or something like that. It's just kind of putting a little bit more force behind the yes, it's the right thing to do, but these state mandates coming down, they're the things that we need to start doing and making sure that we're doing. And that's why we're basically putting best management practices in place as a requirement. So again, it's not just like, hey, this is what we should do. This is what we have to do now to help move that needle towards 75%. And to echo what you said earlier, about the education requirements, yes, we still are full speed ahead on all of that. The county has a contractor that helps their business program, essentially any business that wants help with getting meeting these requirements. They can reach out to our business program and apply for that assistance, and that includes, I believe, our program, our unit doesn't administer that grant, but if I recall correctly, they can receive up to $10,000 if they meet certain requirements can implement these best management practices to meet the ordinance. And there is a similar program for multifamily properties as well that the county administers, and as far as I know, continues to plan to administer in the future. And if I even could continue, the one more point as far as the city enforcement of it, as we've said, it's complaint based is okay. Where the county board put this in the ordinance for the cities as a requirement to enact and enforce. So that is, for me, that is the partnership. It's going another way for it to go both ways. The county has requirements that they enact and enforce. So now we have the city saying, okay, we're going to give you some, or help you, nudge you into getting a little bit more of teeth. I don't want to, if that's the right word, but the ability to take action on, these violations that you might see. And we're still rolling out some assistance with that. My work has been largely on the assisting the city staff to develop the code. And now once they're enacted, my focus will be on helping the cities implement the code. We have some things planned for staff, enforcement staff and recycling staff to get together and talk this through, see what it looks like, and go from there, work together to make it work.
Councilmember Brox.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is about the food trucks. How will the organics requirements at large gatherings apply to smaller kitchen facilities like a food truck? Will the same requirements be required of a fairly small business unit because they're part of a larger event?
John, you want to take that one? You better handle on the details than I do on that.
Well, yeah, I'd love to. So yeah, Madam Mayor and Council Member, food trucks, that's a nuance. And there hasn't been a situation. Again, this is all very new for us as well. These requirements at the county level just started as early as January 1 of 2020. So a lot of this stuff we're planning as much as we can, but these situations come up where we kind of have to step back and reread things and kind of get our interpretation of how that would apply. So looking at if it is an event, if it's a festival. Well, yeah, of course, town festivals have food trucks. Looking at the back of house organics definition is a kitchen or fruit prep of a large venue with organics that's not accessed by customers or the public. So just on the surface, looking at definitions, I think you could draw the line that food truck would be a back of house area that would be required, or in the case of city enforcement, all that would mean is that it would qualify as a large event venue with organics. Therefore, the city would have to enforce the recycling BMPs. The city would never have to enforce a food truck to capture organics that they're generating.
Thank you for the clarification. I think the question in my mind, though, is if we're providing a food truck license to somebody who's coming to an event in our city, you know, do we have a responsibility to inform them of this? It sounds like we do, because we are responsible to educate and inform as much as we can. So we still have some responsibility. I understand it's not an enforcement responsibility, but I appreciate that clarification, because I think if you have 5 or 10 food truck vendors at an event, that is something that they would need to know so that we could be making sure that they're doing it. So thank you for the clarification.
And let me add on to that, if you don't mind, Madam Mayor, Council Member, that it would be the event organizer that has to do this, not the food truck. We're taking arrangement for all the solid waste management. They're the ones that would have to make the setups. Obviously, if you have 8 or 10 food trucks, they're not each going to set up their own solid waste disposal. It'll be the venue that's doing that.
Council, if I can add a quick real life scenario, which would be Rivertown Days. And with Rivertown Days, obviously it's over 300 people, and it is, there's back of house organics that are generated there as well. So in our partnership with Chamber of Commerce, we do require that garbage recycling and those food vendors. Not this last year because we didn't have Rivertown Days. The year before that, we did implement back of house organics for those food vendors. So they had 5-gallon buckets and those sorts of things. And then we brought in a dumpster for that as well. So the city is already doing some of this for our events. And then for other events, Rotary United Heroes League concert, require those folks to bring in paired garbage and recycling for all of those events as well. So those are just real life examples of what specific event things we're talking about here.
Thank you, Chris, for that clarification. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. First, I'd like to thank the county for working with the city of Hastings for our request in meeting us by providing the $132,000 of subsidy, or I'd like to say incentive, for us to continue to maintain following best practices in our solid waste collection. And it's my understanding, as you had just said, that more information is to come. And I hope that our hands aren't tied too much as to how that money is going to be spent. Some of the initial conversations I had with Commissioner Slavic about that perhaps differ a little bit from what our city administrator has been told. So more to come. And I bring that up because this goal of meeting recycling, a goal to recycle 75% of our waste by 2030, that's great. I'm all down with, trying to do the best we can to, take waste out of the landfills and all. But I do also know that $40,000 annually in a grant, which we're supposed to be using for public information and and I'm not sure how exactly the staff does intend, to use all of that. But what I do know is that's a pittance when you're doing public education and informational campaigns. And so just feedback is, I think that it would be really wonderful as you're beginning to look at how it is that you implement this and help the individual cities hit this goal of 75%, is to coordinate public information campaigns, like for instance, the Recycling Partnership, which is a national nonprofit organization that's out there. They put out template materials for individual like cities and counties to be able to use and then just use to reproduce. And they have all sorts of samples about how to do that. And that's so useful because I don't think a lot of cities have on staff, like, professional communication staff who just really specialize in putting together those kinds of materials, and it's really costly. And so I just say all of that is that I hope that you're thinking about more than just how it is that we do the enforcement component, but then also how is it that we help move those numbers to better educate our businesses and to better educate our residents about, how to properly recycle. And like, for instance, the organics program that we have right now in Hastings, I've been trying to do it, and it's really, it's difficult to make that lifestyle change. And then particularly when you have to bring the organics yourself to the dump station. And so I'm trying, but I'm the choir. And so, what more do we do to help people see what the benefits are in participating in those kinds of programs? And so we're all in together. And so I know that's outside of the scope of what you wanted to talk about was an enforcement, but I just think to think more holistically, because I think that it's going to take, a team effort to be able to move a number that large. So thank you for all of your efforts. We do appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Fultz. Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you. I got one follow-up question for Dave and John here. Thanks for the clarification, Chris Jenkins. Thanks for the real life experience. I think we're kind of doing this already. Where I got hung up on the organics on the private sector, it sounds like, and can you confirm, staff from the county, it's just the food portion. I just don't want to require a business to buy organic straws, organic plates, organic everything, and that, because they will contaminate their dumpster. It's happened to me every day, and it's a really heavy expense for someone that owns a business. And I could see right away, they're always going to ask the city to be a partner in the event, put our name on the banner, and then they're going to say, why don't you bring in the organic side of it and pay for that side? So I'm a little cautious about 2024. I'm kind of looking ahead here a little bit. And all those people, I mean, if they had to buy the organic cups, straws, plates, and everything else, we will get phone calls. It won't be the county. It'll be us saying, I'm just looking at a food shelf. It's going to call saying, do you know what they just put on us as an expense?
Madam Mayor, Council Member, I was the one leading the charge to not include compostable products. Okay, this is food waste only, intentionally food waste only. There's almost no chance we're going to add in compostable products. They're a contaminant. They're too difficult. They're very expensive. They don't always compost well. So no, this is, you can be certain this is food waste only. And if I have any say, it's going to stay food waste only. And I'm the enforcement person, so I have some say.
I appreciate that, and I would love to see that in writing myself.
It is. It's if you read the ordinances, back of house food waste only.
Back of food. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. It's in the ordinance.
Council, if it's okay, Commissioner Slavic would like to come in and speak. If you could help him in, John. Great. Thank you. Welcome, Commissioner. You're on mute.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Am I off? Okay, I'm good.
There you
Can
go.
you hear me now?
Yes.
You can, great. Thank you very much for the conversation, first of all. I think that anytime the county has shown up to any of the communities in Dakota County, it's been a very lively discussion. And many of them have happened last year. Hastings is one of the latter ones. So I do appreciate the conversation, because you go back a couple years ago, and this is very much where the county board was in many of these conversations. And Dave and John can certainly attest to this in the fact that we rejected the first Ordinance 110 revisions that the state of Minnesota was putting on us because of how burdensome they were. In fact, we actually got a county attorney legal opinion to see what would happen if we said no to the state. So I just to give you that perspective on there, that's how frustrated we were throughout this process. And at the same time, knowing we wanted, just like all of you, we want to go in and get the things out of the landfill that can be out and that. But there was, to give perspective, there was a very high cost to go and do curbside organics that was going to go right on every one of the residences. And there was a number of extra costs that we were trying to be able to achieve the goal, but also not put as much of a burden, not only on our businesses, but also on all of us as residents. So I just want to certainly say that I share some of those parts in there. I think a second thing is to make note that many of the things that other communities are very concerned about have already been best practices in the city of Hastings. First and foremost of that is the weekly recycling. You talk to every single community that doesn't have weekly recycling, and they will tell you that you're not going to get more recycling. It's just going to cost more. However, Hastings has been able to be the model that for at least the last 9 years, they've been doing weekly recycling. It has not cost more as a result of that. And we're actually, as a community, recycling more than our communities across the county that don't do that. And Chris Jenkins gave the example of some of the large events that the city had already been requiring some of the organic side of things. So I think as much as there's some constraint in how we're discussing today, I think it's important to note that Hastings has quite frankly been a leader in many ways of solid waste throughout the county with that. So I just wanted to share that. And then just last point with in terms of just this is probably one of those classic examples of bureaucratic government top down telling you what to do. And I apologize, but in this also comes in, we're in that middle telling you what to do. So it goes in from the state to the counties to the cities, all the way down. It's just not exactly how we like to do it, which I think the point like Councilmember Fox had said, if we can figure out how to do education, I think that's what we all would rather do than the sledgehammer approach. So just wanted to go on that part in there and say that the county still is looking to be a partner, not to go and be doing all this stuff here, but we've just been very much plateaued. I would go and say that the more we can encourage to change the culture, as Councilmember Fulch had said, with you doing our in-home organics, our household, we actually have a scale and we weigh how much we're able to bring out there. And it's by the way, it's pretty surprising how often we go there and somebody else is there also dropping something off. So the running joke at the county is that even though you're supposed to sign up, we're pretty sure that enough people in town know the code and are just showing up on their own, even though they're not signed up with the county, because it's actually been wildly popular for the community with that. So and the last point that I would just want to make, and certainly open for any questions on kind of the relationship that we all have, to the point of Councilmember Fulch, yes, we're still working on what those dollars will be used for, as long as they're in the solid waste realm. But my most recent conversations with staff is that where some of yours and my conversations are, seems to be gaining some momentum and what those could be for. But just keep in mind that the county board did pass those dollars to go in and benefit those communities that are truthfully paying a higher cost because they're going to Red Wing as opposed to a landfill. So first and foremost, this was to be one, how do we address solid waste issues, but also to go in and make it so that our businesses and our residents that pay those garbage bills are the ones getting the biggest benefits. So I know the county attorney is working with city staffs to kind of figure out some of that stuff, and you'll see it in first quarter still is the expectation. But otherwise, thank you for this, and I'm certainly open to any questions that John and Dave did a great job, but if anything I can answer, I'd be happy to do that as well.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Council, any questions? Any additional discussion? Okay, then I would accept a motion to approve an ordinance of the City of Hastings amending Chapter City Code, Chapter 50, General Provisions.
Your Honor, I move.
Councilmember Fox.
I'll second.
Councilmember Fulch. Okay, any other new discussion, council? Clerk Flatten, no, okay, Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch.
Yes.
Councilmember Fox.
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld.
Yes.
Councilmember Lund.
Yes.
Councilmember Brox.
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And thank you both, John and Dave, for your assistance in this, and Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank
That
you for
motion
having us,
prevails.
everybody.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, before we move on, there's a second part of that which requires a action of its own, which is to approve the resolution for summary publication for this as well. That was the second action that's requested. So a formality that we need to do as we publish this resolution in the newspaper.
Okay. Well, need a motion on that? Councilmember Brox
Yep, motion to approve.
and Councilmember Fulch.
I'll second, sure.
Okay, thank you. Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And that motion prevails. Thank you. Thanks for that clarification, Chris. Now we have a public hearing for the vacation of easement of Wiechmann on 178 Summit Point Drive. For this item, we will have an introduction by Community Development Director John Hinsman, followed by a public hearing and action by City Council.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council members. I'm going to share my screen to show the property that we're looking at here. What we have before you tonight is to consider a vacation of easement. This is also has a public hearing component to it. The property we're looking at here is this property right here, 178 Summit Point Drive. It's an undeveloped property off of the cul-de-sac of Summit Point Court. What's being requested is part of a larger request to relocate the property boundaries here. The area here in red is where the existing property boundaries are for the home. As you can see with the other detached townhomes that have been constructed in this area, this constitutes really the area where the building is constructed, and all the other areas surrounding it is association held land, which is under a drainage and utility easement. The applicant is hoping to do is to basically move the lot box 5 feet forward towards Summit Point Court for a couple of different reasons. One, you can see towards the back of the yard here, there is some existing tree cover. He would like to be able to move the home further away from those trees so to limit any disturbance that would occur behind there. So the action that we have before you tonight is the request for vacation of easement. As I said earlier, the whole area here that is not within the privately owned lot boxes is under a drainage and utility easement. Now, the term drainage and utility easement you may connote having drainage and utilities in it, and perhaps there are some within the area. But within the specific area in which the request for vacation is to occur, there are none. This is just part of a larger area in a way that we have property described to limit development on that association held property. So the action before you tonight is to hold a public hearing and to consider vacation of this easement area located in yellow, which is about 5 feet from east to west, and I think about 56 feet north to south here. And I can stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And I'll bring back in Ms. Myers as we open the public hearing. If she is still on. Oh, there she
Yes,
is.
I am.
Thank you.
How does this affect the back of the property? That property is a lot higher than our property down below. And so we're wondering about the drainage. Well, if you're still here, you can come on too. He's our other co-president. Do you know how the drainage is going to be affected? Or why was drainage even brought up?
Mayor, I can address that if you'd like.
Thank you. Yes.
Sure. The request on the vacation of the drainage and utility easement really has no bearing on the drainage for the property. The property in this, let me go back to my screen here. I'm pointing to something nobody else could see. The area right here is generally a flat area. There is no drainage swales, no drainage infrastructure within this area. The drainage should not be affected. The area was mass graded back in 2006 with the rest of the development to create pads for future development here. And so by moving this property further east by 5 feet, it's going to move it away from the existing homes that are to the west over here, which you can just see off to the edge here, to provide greater separation. It is not going to have a negative effect on the drainage in this area because there really is no great difference here. There is no drainage facilities that were contemplated in this area.
Okay, well, that's what we didn't understand. And if it was going to add any more water to our property, we are fully against that. But if it's not going to do anything, why? I don't understand the language of it, I guess. Vacation of a drainage easement. To me, drainage is water. So why is it, stated like that? And that's what brings us here.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Myers. John, can you reference
Sure,
to
I
that?
can address that, Mayor. Yeah, I understand the concern when something is going to affect drainage and utilities. The term, though, is used throughout this larger area. Anything that's not homes here is under this drainage and utility easement, albeit only certain portions of it actually convey water or convey any utilities within it. So the area that is being proposed to be vacated, this yellow sliver here, does not contain any utilities and does not contain any drainage infrastructure. It should not have any effect on the drainage that's currently occurring here by doing this vacation.
Does it have anything to do with how they might, what I want to say, level off the property or do something to the back? Does that have anything to do with this?
Sure, with the drainage, vacation of drainage and utility easement that's before us tonight, no, that would have no effect on it. The plan that was approved back in 2006 would still have to be complied with, and that is they would have to channel all water within the property and not have any water leaving the property that would negatively affect neighboring properties.
Okay, as long as that's in writing. Okay,
Does that help?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
That's what we didn't understand. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other hands raised? I'll just look to see if there is. I see none. So at this time, I will close the public hearing. Council, any discussion? Councilmember Leifeld.
Thank you, Honor. Okay, John, to Ms. Myers' question there, when in your little map, the yellow part is the front of the house, right? Because there's the cul-de-sac. So when in this picture, then when we're vacating that easement, does that mean the house will be built on that yellow part or further back to the tree line? I didn't quite catch what you were saying because I'm leaning towards Ms. Myers' question of if the house is being built further back towards the tree line, does that not require more of a retaining wall elevation type thing? So go ahead and I'll let you answer the question. Is it being built closer to the front of the cul-de-sac?
Council member, yes, the house would be built closer to the cul-de-sac. Right now, this area in red, which would include the western part of this yellow line, is where the house would be under the current plans. What they're hoping to do is to shift the entire house 5 feet further east towards the cul-de-sac, 5 feet further away from the tree line up here.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other council? Oh, Councilmember Brox.
I'm going to take a shot at defining a drainage and utility easement. And John, you can tell me where I go wrong, because I'm sure this is my common or definition and not the one that an engineer would give. But my understanding of what a drainage and utility easement is in regards to a piece of property is the allowance of space between properties, or it can be on any side of a property, to allow the drainage that needs to be built, or to allow the utilities that need to be built underground. So basically, easements are a way for us to reserve space for something that might be there already, or maybe it needs to be there in the future. But that's basically how I understand an easement. Can you tell me if my definition, just to clarify, a layperson's definition of what an easement would be, is that right, or are there any parts of that I got wrong?
Sure, Councilmember, I can expound on it a little bit further. Though I agree with that, I'd also add that when an easement is taken on a property, you're buying rights to that property. The underlying ownership remains with the association, but there's certain rights that are being purchased and cannot be enjoyed on the property. The one thing that we look at with associations, of which you have a lot of common open space, is to ensure that there's no construction of buildings or privately held items within these easement areas. And so we set up these drainage and utility easements along all these association properties to really restrict the ability for private encroachment and construction on them. Now, there's also a point within these properties in which there truly are drainage areas and utilities that need to be protected. But the purpose we have them so large in this situation is really to restrict future building.
Thank you for that explanation. That helps.
Thank you, Councilmember Brox. Any other discussion? Councilmember Vaughn?
Thank you, Your Honor. John, going off of what you just asked or educated us on, that yellow is allowing, if we allow the easement, they can build their house inside that yellow box, which is an easement that we asked for to do utilities access to work, correct? So once we allow them to do that, we're not tearing up, we don't have the right to go in there anymore and fix anything underneath there or have access to it. Is that correct?
That would be correct, council member. There are, in review of this, there are no present utilities under there. The yellow area would be basically the front of the house. And so there really wouldn't be any room for us to put any utilities within that area anyways.
Follow up, Your Honor. Is this owned by the association? I'm referencing a property that we worked on here in Wallen that was the same thing inside an easement that we denied. And I want to make sure we're consistent here of what easements we allow and which ones we don't.
Sure. In this situation here, yes, where the area, the drainage and utility easement vacation is on property that is owned by the association, not by the private property owner. In another step here, there would be a transfer of ownership of the 5-foot sliver towards the front of the building with a 5-foot sliver behind the building to move the box up. So there would be a transfer of those that in reshuffling of the property line there.
In follow up, then that's what I'm asking. So the real change here is we're just transferring easement a little bit. We're moving it. They're allowed to build closer. So the back of the property is the part of the easement that we're having access to or using for drainage.
Yeah, I think that what's trying to be accomplished here by the property owner and concurred by the association is it would be a better situation to have the house 5 feet closer to Summit Point Court because it would move it further away from the tree line in the back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Any other discussion, council? Okay, then I accept a motion to approve a resolution, the City Council of the City of Hastings vacating a portion of a drainage and utility easement generally located east of 178 Summit Point Drive.
Your Honor, I make a motion
Councilmember
to
Liefeld?
accept the easement as indicated in your little speech.
Okay,
Do you need me to repeat it?
I don't think so. I need a Councilmember Brox?
Second.
Is that a second?
Yes.
Okay. Any other additional discussion, council? Okay, Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Member Vaughn,
Yes.
Member Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Member Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Bassett.
Yes. And that motion prevails. We now have a public hearing on a proposed ordinance amendment to zoning code C2 in interim uses. For this item, we will have an introduction by Community Development Director John Hinsman, followed by a public hearing and action by City Council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council members. What we have before you tonight is a public hearing to look at an amendment to Hastings City Code. As City Attorney Feligo had pointed out earlier, part of the amendment that is asked of you tonight relates to the resolution that was approved to the settlement agreement on the motor coach commerce facility. I'll get into that in just a moment here. But what we're looking at here with the ordinance amendment is really two sections of the city code. One of them is a new section in which we would be adding, and that is to Chapter 30 relating to interim use permits. Now, an interim use permit is something that we have facilitated in the past, albeit with the new language here, we're going to make it a little more structured. We base the interim use permit language on the special use permit language. The question may come up as to what's the difference between a special use permit and an interim use permit. Interim use permits are meant to be temporary, whereas special use permit follows with the land and can follow in perpetuity. An interim use permit has a defined limit of time, and that limit of time can vary from permit to permit. In the situation with the motor coach commerce facility and the agreement we've structured there, we've agreed to 2 10-year terms on that property. But if other interim use permits were to come in, they could be approved on differing timeframes. So we established the criteria and the parameters in which an interim use permit could be considered. The second portion of this are amendments to our zoning code, and in particular our C2 zoning district. Our C2 zoning district is a little bit unusual, and I'm going to put a picture of that on our screen here. It's an area of town that has a smattering of different properties. This is Highway 61 coming south from the Vermilion River, continuing down this way towards Hastings Ford, and then splitting off at Highway 316. The areas that are located in red here are Zone C2. C2 right now is termed within our city code I got to remember, I don't remember off the top of my head. It is the Highway Auto Specialized Commerce District. What it is most known for is this is the area of town in which automobile sales can occur. So all the automobile sales lots that we have in town are located within this district. We also have a few other types of areas as well that are located within the C2 zone. In reviewing the C2 district, we concluded that the definitions were fairly broad, and it would be best to be able to provide a more tighter definition of what we anticipated and what we desired to have within that district. And so that's what we've done with the amendments that are before you tonight. Get back out of the screen here. One of the things we are adding is an opportunity via an interim use permit to consider what's termed a motor coach commerce facility. And we have termed what a motor coach commerce facility is within the definitions in the zoning code as well. On a motor coach, this is a type A motorhome, defined in state statutes. It has to be it cannot be 15 years or older at that time. It has to be less than 15 years old. When we take a look at what this would look like, I'm going to put my screen back up here. We're looking at here. So we have defined motor coaches very tightly. This type of facility, less than 15 years old, would be termed what a motor coach would be. And so that would be something that would be allowed via an interim use permit within that zoning district. And we've also defined other items too, some of them which are allowed within the district, some of them which would not be allowed within the district. We have a definition for what's termed a travel trailer as well, has that 15-year provision on it as well. This is more of your fifth wheel type of facility. The point that we were trying to do with this ordinance is to allow for a very limited window in which a motor coach facility could be implemented within this area of the city. What we were not looking for was to open this up for more broader uses. And so we put in there specifically prohibitions on camping, defined what camping would be, and defined it to limit it to this type of facility only. So that, in a nutshell, are the changes that we're looking at today to the C2 district. We did have the Planning Commission review this on a couple of different times, the most recently on December 28th of last year. Planning Commission did vote 6-0 to recommend approval of the amendment. At the public hearing, no one spoke for or against it at that time. As the council is aware, we've been looking at changes to this code and reviewing motor coach commerce facilities for well over the last year. And we've worked with our city attorney as well as the league attorney, George Hoff, in the crafting of this ordinance. So this is a public hearing. You can open it up at this time, or I can stand for any questions. I will remind you that there's two aspects to this. One is the adoption of an ordinance, which can be done in a simple majority. And the other one is the adoption of a resolution for the summary ordinance to be published. This is similar to the action that was done earlier with the waste facilities. So I can stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I will look in and see if there's anyone. At this time, I will open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak to this, I will watch for your raised hand. Motion. I see no one in the audience for the public hearing. This time I will close the public hearing. Council discussion? No council discussion. Okay, then, council, I would look to accept a motion to approve the ordinance of the City of Hastings amending City Code Chapter 30, City Organizations, and Chapter 55 Zoning Code.
So moved, Your Honor.
Councilmember Brox,
I'll second, Your Honor.
Councilmember Leifeld. And any other new discussion, council? Okay, Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brox,
Yes.
Mayor Faxbender.
Yes. And that motion prevails. So then we need another motion.
Your Honor,
Councilmember
I
Fox?
move the resolution.
Councilmember Fox, second. Councilmember Leifeld? Additional discussion, council? Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Member Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brox,
Yes.
Mayor Faxbender.
Yes. And that motion prevails. Okay, thank you all. That was a long discussions. And John, thank you so much for all you've done with that project. Thank you.
Yay.
Yes. So council, now we have a resolution to approve the 2021 CDBG budget. And for this item, we have John giving us an introduction with that as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. This is the annual item we have for our CDBG budget. This year, our estimate is just under $77,000. These are federal block grant funds that are given to us by Dakota County. In the past, we have used it for assessment abatement. What that means is that the assessments on city reconstruction projects for low to moderate income individuals could be fully or partially abated. And that is what we're proposing to do with the funding this year. We have a project along 15th Street between Pine and Pleasant. And speaking with Public Works Director Egger, we anticipate the requests to come forward on that project that would expend the full amount of the funding being proposed. So what we're asking tonight is to adopt the resolution to authorize submittal of the budget to Dakota County along with the attached application. And I can stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Council discussion? Councilmember Vaughn.
Nope, I was here to make a motion to
Oh,
authorize.
I'm sorry. Okay, I see no one wanting to discuss, so Councilmember Vaughn will make a motion,
Motion to,
Second.
oh, go ahead.
and Councilmember Brox. Additional discussion? Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Member Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yes.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Liefeld,
Yes.
Member Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brox,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes, and that motion prevails. Tonight we have a 2021 CIP CEP recommendations from from City Administrator Dan Waticha.
Forget how this works sometimes. Thank you. I can introduce it, but I think these recommendations are from senior staff as a group, and I think that's important to note. We took a different approach to capital projects this year with uncertainty about how the economy and finances might look throughout the year, particularly concerns about local government aid. Although we took a list of prioritized projects, and you could a little bit predict here were projects that were higher ranked, here were projects that were lower ranked. We didn't want to go ahead and actually move forward with any projects until we knew that money was in place, and a question of are we comfortable about current finances in the economy. At the end of December, we received about $430,000 of local government aid. This actually was the 2020 allocation, or the second half of the allocation, but close enough to the first of the year that let's roll it into the 2021 and the process of using money when it's available. When looking back at the property tax collections in October, the county had given a November extension, so the collections in November also. In both cases, they were strong and on target with where we would expect them to be in a normal year. So that was a good sign. At the 1st of December, the state had a new state budget forecast that actually had the current biennium go from a deficit to a surplus, and a significant reduction in the projected deficit for the state's coming biennium. So again, good signs about where our financial outlook is, and from staff's position, comfortable recommending let's use that $430,000 and put it to good use for our residents, rather than saving it for a rainy day. If the economy was a bit more sour, we might say let's hold tight and see how things are playing out. But staff met over the past couple of weeks, looked at the ABC list, the priorities, moved some projects up based on the timing, and other projects down. But this list is the consensus by staff on how to spend $430,000. Quickly running through them, replacing a 16, 17-year-old Tahoe for the fire department, replacing the 5-year rotation on our computer replacement. So just here's this year's replacement of computers, replacing a 21-year-old Zamboni at the ice arena. Part of that would be using some ice arena fund balance, not entirely from the LGA. Keeping on a 10-year replacement schedule for one of the large 16-foot lawnmowers that the Parks Department uses. Those do a lot of work every summer. replacing a 20-year-old Cromer painter machine for the Parks Department, doing $30,000, which is sort of 1/3 of a 3-year cycle on seal coating, some crack sealing of the 30 miles of the trail system. So really, this is a asset management, maintaining what we have in order to help keep it from getting in worse repair. Expect that when we see the next sort of list of recommended projects, hopefully this spring, there'll actually be some reconstruction to take care of stuff that has deteriorated, but this is trying to maintain the current condition. Investing in or replacing the squad cameras in the police cars. This replacement would put us, one, make sure that we're working off of one platform. Currently, we've got the squads and the body cameras are not on the same system. So this would make them all consistent. It also would make us consistent with the platform used by the county. Additional money for the street mill and overlay project. The adopted budget already includes $450,000. This bumps it up by another $50,000. Just trying to keep on top of maintaining our street assets as best we can afford. Do note that this one has a timing piece, and because of other parts of the mill and overlay financing, we need to report into the state how much we're doing, where we're doing it by the end of the month. So if there was any thoughts on delaying this list, this piece really needs to be decided up or down today. Obviously, staff's recommendation is to move forward with it. The last item is to replace the backup generator at the hydro plant. And actually, this is not being funded or proposed to be funded with the LGA. It's a matter of, it was on the priority list, but hadn't made the cut from the budget itself, and saying the hydro plant might not be able to afford it on its own, but this is critical. Let's take out up to 5 years, hopefully it can be paid back quicker, loan from the sewer fund that has some ability to afford that. But essentially, if the power goes out at the power plant, we will see water coming in and not be able to pump it out. So this really is emergency generator to keep the pumps going if there were some failure there, and trying to keep from seeing serious damage to the hydro plant if it were flooded out. Those are the 9 projects that staff are recommending. Hope that we'll be having similar recommendations later in the year. But with that, I know there are some questions on the Tahoe, but can certainly stand for any questions on any of the projects. And the other piece I'd note at the end of the memo, just for 21, not even looking ahead to projects in 22 or 23 on the CIP list, we've got $8 million worth of projects that are on hold. And even with optimistic projections for local government aid or fund balance that we might use later this year, we're not going to get all the way through that list in 21. Federal allocations that might help take some of that burden off of us. But this is what we're looking at currently. But with that, I'll certainly stand for any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dan. Councilmember Fulch?
Thank you, Your Honor. As Dan had just mentioned about the first item up for approval is the Fire Tahoe at $52,000. And so just a little background information, just to remind folks, because we have discussed this in the past. So what had occurred was in January of 2019, there was a fleet assessment that was conducted specifically to look at vehicles that would be, which ones would be prime for converting from a combustion engine to an electric vehicle. And so the city of Hastings participated in an initiative called City Charging Ahead, and they received a grant. And so this study was done. And in it, I had forwarded to the council early this morning, just the PowerPoint presentation that was provided as a summary of what that study had been. I never received like the full study I'm sure it was very thick. But so there were at the time, there were two 2004 Chevy Tahoes that were identified as the best of the entire fleet to convert to a Mitsubishi Outlander hybrid plug-in. And so what had happened, and Clerk Flatten can help me remember, because I think she was the interim when we had these conversations, was when that study recommendation came out, the first Tahoe had actually already been ordered and was en route. And so they missed that opportunity. Just, it was like two boats passing, in the night. And so that was unfortunate. And then this decision with the second Tahoe was made not to replace it right away, although it had been in our CIP for a few years there. And the decision was made to just put a pause on that particular one to give whoever was going to be the new fire chief the ability to make a decision on whether or not they actually wanted to replace that particular vehicle or not. And so Julie Clerk Flatten had taken it off of our CIP for 2020. And so now that we have Chief Townsend in place, when the Finance Committee, when we met in August, Chief Townsend was updating the three of us who were on that committee of what his plans were for the year. He actually did mention this Tahoe, and I had brought up at the time, that I think this was because there's just a lot of information that was going on that day, and I was like, I think this is one of the Tahoes that was recommended for an electric vehicle. And he was unaware of that study, and I believe him. He wasn't the fire chief at that time, and he may not have been aware of the study and how that had all rolled forward now that it's been 2 years ago. And so I would like to see that particular fire, that Tahoe, for just to be tabled. I'm not saying not to move ahead with the replacement if staff need it, but it was the most opportune vehicle of the city's fleet to actually make a conversion to being an electric vehicle. And the council did have a follow-up conversation. I can't remember how long ago. I'm sure it was pre-COVID, so it was at least a year ago, about in the future when opportunities presented themselves for vehicles to be converted to electric, particularly when it was cost beneficial, that we begin to make those moves. And so and the reason I'm saying it was between a $12,000 to almost a $15,000 range is because there were two Tahoes, and I'm not sure which one was which any longer in the replacement schedule. So that's why I didn't say definitively what the total cost savings were going to be, but and again, it would be slightly offset because some kind of charging apparatus would be needed, to go with the vehicle. But just a dumb charger, I mean, literally, I was just on a conversation with a vendor like 2 days ago, and they said a charger which you just plug in and let the vehicle plug overnight was $600. So I don't know what the needs would be, but I'm just saying it can be very economical depending on how the vehicle is used and charged. And so with that said, so I know I probably caught Dan and I don't know if that was shared with Chief Townsend earlier today off, and I would assume that you probably weren't aware of those recommendations, but I would really like to see staff take a serious look at following that fleet study and actually looking at converting that vehicle into an electric vehicle. So that's where I'm at with it.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Lund.
Thank you, Your Honor. I recall the conversation. We did. I don't know if we dove deep into it necessarily, but I remember you bringing it up, Councilmember Fulch. And I think in general, I'm supportive of the concept when practical, right? Converting things for the sake of converting it doesn't. I don't think that's the justice that or the justification that we need. I'd like to know a couple of things. And I don't know if we have the people on the meeting to be able to answer it today or not, but why was that Tahoe and the other one identified as the optimal vehicle to be replaced? What were the criteria that were set to do that? If it were, and I'm not trying to minimize the study, but if it's the oldest one and it's up next for being replaced, well, it's good to know, but that's not necessarily a great criteria, other than take the opportunities as they come, which we should be looking at, I think, for vehicles that make sense to be flipped over to an electric platform. But here's the deal: things are moving really quickly right now in this space. There are major manufacturers knocking at the door of producing really viable products that you're not going to miss a beat necessarily in performance or things of that nature, but not today necessarily. There's not a ton of appealing alternatives today. There's some that are on the horizon in the 1 to 5 years from now kind of thing, where you're going to see a lot of pickup trucks, SUVs that are just like the ones you see on the road today. That you're not going to go, oh, that's a lesser vehicle. But so not to go too deep into that, but what that does is bring me to the next question then is, what is it used for? If this is just tooling around town, sure, that the Outlander is going to be fine. But in reality, that Outlander is really it's a crossover vehicle. It's effectively a car that has all-wheel drive, and it's a little bit bigger body, but it's on a car chassis. It's not a four-wheel drive vehicle. Its towing capacity is 1,500 pounds. The Tahoe is like 5 times that. So if the chief is using this as a vehicle to do any sort of emergency work, pulling somebody out or whatever it needs to, driving in difficult conditions, we need to take that in consideration. I just don't think the Outlander would be the right solution. There's not a lot of other alternatives right now. So my 2 questions were, why was it identified? What were the criteria? So it's kind of a 1 and 1A. And then what is the Tahoe used for?
Thank you, Councilmember Lund. Dan, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, I have a lot of trouble on the study piece. My understanding is one of the key factors that what the study looked at on determining the financial viability was idle time. So a vehicle that might be sitting idling, a lot cheaper to have it running, idling off of electricity rather than gas or diesel, gas in this case, I think. So a matter of some of these vehicles that respond to a call and sit and idle, I think was part of what drove those ones being highlighted in that study. That's as far as I want to get with the study. I certainly wasn't part of it, and I'm getting pieces secondhand and don't know just enough to start being dangerous with the study itself. With the vehicle itself, the Tahoe that we're looking at replacing, it is an emergency response vehicle. It's a special service vehicle, which the study was more of a off the showroom floor model, as you were pointing out. A couple of specific concerns that Chief has about the operation of this vehicle are the Tahoe has wiring and a bigger alternator, and it's set up to be able to run lights and sirens and have a computer in it. And quite frankly, the off the showroom floor model doesn't have that capability to do that. You might be able to have a light or a couple of lights with limited power to it, but it's not going to be the full setup. It is a vehicle that needs some muscle. It's four-wheel drive. It goes off-road and across fields to respond to brush fires. It, depending on the time of a call, it will be driving in heavy snow on unplowed roads out in the townships. And really just concerns that the vehicle that we're looking at replacing is not one to be, currently not one to be looking at least not the one recommended in the study. Do note, I believe actually since that study came out, so very recent in the last couple of years, both Ford and Chevy do now have special service vehicles in a hybrid model. We did not price those. We figured they're brand new and some concerns about their being unproven by how new they are, but also just a matter of an assumption that they were going to be much higher cost and certainly eat up whatever savings there might have been when comparing a bit of an apples and oranges comparison, but when comparing our Tahoe with the Outlander model. So staff's recommendation is to stick with the existing Tahoe in this case. Recognize that respect for resources is one of the city's values that we put on anything in print, our core values, and definitely want to look at how do we look at greening our fleet and doing other things for energy efficiency beyond what we're currently doing. Looking at replacing some of those errand type vehicles, much easier to look at converting those over to electric, but concerns about doing it with an emergency response vehicle.
Your Honor.
Dan, Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. And so many very large cities are converting their police and fire administrative vehicles to electric vehicles. And so, as you did say that, yes, there are new vehicles that are out there. The study is now 2 years old. And so that's my point, that staff haven't really looked at what is actually available right now for compatible makes and models. And to going back to Councilmember Lund's question about how it is that these studies are conducted, they put telematics equipment within the vehicles to monitor how the vehicle is functioning, how fast it's driving, how often it's driving, how long it's sitting, how long it's idling, as Dan had said. And it's not which ones are the oldest and that they're the easiest to flip. It's how they're used and what the total cost of operations is over the life cycle of the vehicle, and how it is that you would get the best opportunities for savings. And so, as Dan was saying, I'm guessing that the Tahoe is a huge gas guzzler, and that's why there was such a significant amount of savings that would be attributed to it. And so that was my point about just tabling it and really looking at it. You know, the Great Plains Institute is having a webinar next Thursday from 10 to noon that is specifically meant for cities to learn about how to buy electric vehicles. It's being actually facilitated by the Great Plains, but the speakers are the state of Minnesota's procurement office, specifically their fleet manager. And then they're also going to have Sourcewell, which is the national cooperative agreement that has electric vehicles on contract that cities are able to use for procurement purposes, and also has some of the best pricing available on those. And so that's what I was asking for, is for staff just to be educated and actually look at it, since I think it's unfortunate that this study was, conducted and not one of the vehicles that had been earmarked as being flipped over have been flipped over, and so the city isn't currently looking at flipping any vehicles. And so I wasn't saying no to this, but I would really appreciate if staff took the time to actually be well versed and before they make a decision that's kind of knee jerk on just, oh, well, we had a muscle car, so we need to, replace it with a big muscle car. And so particularly when you look at city of Minneapolis, city of Denver, so many large cities can bring their fleet over to this way. And so anyhow, so that's why I was asking for staff just to table this particular one. So otherwise, I don't see a path to staff beginning to actually do this kind of evaluation and this conversion of the fleet. I mean, to be honest, I don't hear anything from staff about how it is that they're going to be moving forward in some of these green initiatives. And this is one where a study was done and that there's no path to actually doing anything about it. So.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think we got a reference back to the study in 2019. It was done, if I remember right, by a grant. I think Excel Energy helped with it. I think that's great that we did it, but I think we need to have that conversation as a council then and approve that study so we utilize it when staff understands when you make decisions, we as a council approve that study. I don't remember us approving this study as a whole council so staff can reference back to it when it's time to replace or at least analyze what's coming into it. In this situation, I'm agreeing with our fire chief. The difference, and Councilmember Fultz, I get it. I think bigger cities are doing it, but I'm looking at our city, and our city have partnerships, and we have fields, and we have we're going to townships, and we're going. This vehicle has to go in some other areas that Minneapolis doesn't have to go into.
You froze. You froze, Mark.
An example.
Okay.
So I'm agreeing as a council, we need to get, I say correct, froze still.
So I don't know if you know, Mark, but you did freeze. Oh, you must be going in and out. Here he comes.
Sorry, Your Honor. I can't wait to be back in the chamber where we get.
Yes. So you did freeze, so I don't know.
I always reference saying I agree with staff's recommendation at this time, but that study needs to be looked at as a council, and we need to approve it to give staff direction for future. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Any additional discussion, council? Oh, you froze again, Mark. Sorry. Okay. Can't tell if he's trying to. Any other discussion? Oh, Councilmember Brax.
Yeah, it won't take a long time because you guys have already heard enough of my hybrid stories because I had one and it was a very positive experience. So I do have to share a couple of points just that I heard made earlier. And the charging station, a station is not required as far as I know. I don't know about a Mitsubishi Outlander, but my car plugged into the wall of my garage. So I had a $110 charger that came with my car and I plugged it into the wall at night and we ran it on off hours so that it was charging when the energy rates were at the lowest rate of the day. And so it didn't really have any cost. The interesting thing about a hybrid though, and I Googled this Mitsubishi vehicle, a hybrid goes about 22 miles on an electric charge. So the charge that you charge overnight for that vehicle goes about 22 miles and then it will switch to the gas engine when needed. So I know there are full electrics and there are hybrids, but I believe, I'm not sure if this one looked like it was a hybrid. So there is some energy savings, but it still has both a gas and electric engine in it, and it switches between the two mechanisms as you drive it. Now, I had a Ford Fusion, so I wasn't driving an SUV, but I can see from my understanding and my husband's experience in public safety, just that how much they outfit these vehicles for these specific jobs. And this is kind of going back to Councilmember Lund's point. There is a lot of energy drained from the battery, running lights, running sirens, running laptops, running all the equipment necessary inside those vehicles. So I just want to default to the person who knows best, the person who's going to be using the vehicle. I think we need to defer to chief and acknowledge that we all have some room to educate ourselves and grow in this area and start applying the study to the vehicles that we're using as a city. But I think the person that's using it, we need to respect their opinion. He did give his opinion in this matter, and I want to respect it. And I also want to push all of our staff to continue to learn and educate themselves and look into these opportunities when they become available. I don't think this one is urgent. I don't think it's necessary to tell him he has to get an electric vehicle for this specific purchase. But I think it is good to encourage all of us who are working for the city to be more energy efficient in all ways, and that we should look into this. But I understand his point, because there is a lot of power drainage on a vehicle that's outfitted for public service, public safety vehicles. They just are. So I would, with that, I would make a motion to approve the recommendations from Dan Waticha that came from staff, and I would motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Brox. Thank you, Councilmember Lund, as a second. Additional discussion, council. Councilmember Liefeld.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just to chime in, I absolutely agree with Councilmember Fulch in regards to, I feel like there was a piece lost here because we were in an interim of changing the guard as it may at the fire department. This is definitely something that I think we're already behind. We've seen this happen in things here within, the city when it comes to, wanting to sit and wait. We want to sit and wait and get more information. We want to wait for prices to go down. We want to wait till there's more data. And we saw that primarily with the solar, so I feel like we're always just a few steps behind. I'm not sure what the protocol is for tonight with this coming before us. I do believe that this is something that we need to look at as a city going forward, which is, I think, what was said previously, that this would be something that we would look at going forward. Where reasonable, we would start making these changes. And I'm not sure if this is the spot at which we say, hey, wait a minute, we should have done that. Or can we say, all right, you guys, let's start doing this. Let's make sure this is on our radar. And I feel that would be my direction right now, would be that we approve, as everyone had indicated. I always like to err on the side of caution and let the experts, tell me what is best, and then we talk it through. But I do agree strongly with Councilmember Fulchin that this is something where we don't want to be, too far behind the process, when we can make a difference now and, save our city money in the long run. But I'm not sure that tonight is the night for us to say, hey, we missed it. What do we do? Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilmember Liefeld. Councilmember Lund.
Yeah, just real quickly, I want to be clear. I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I kind of get the sense that we're maybe on the same page a little bit. This just specifically isn't a very good example of converting to electric vehicle. That's my opinion. Now, I get Councilmember's point, Fulch's point, which is, if not now, it's just a kick in the can kind of thing. So I think Dan has heard some of the interest from some of the council members to perhaps look at this a little closer for future opportunities, but this particular vehicle just isn't it. And so that was the sentiment that I was trying to convey.
Thank you, Councilmember Lund. And I concur with everyone. I just think this vehicle needs to be strong. And I'd be leery of, if it is out into the country roads and everything, that it doesn't have the stability that an electric vehicle would. So I agree. I think we should move forward with these electric vehicles, especially for maybe our streets or public safety, or not public safety, I'm sorry, but public works and a few of the other cars that we're going to be looking at replacing in the near future. I also wish that Councilmember Fulch will you pass that webinar on to us? So if we have the opportunity, we can start educating ourselves and watch that webinar.
Sure,
So
I
the
can pass it on. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I can do that. Yep. It's meant for staff though. But it's not like a policy level. It's more like, okay, staff, this is how you go about buying actual cars. But
Okay. Or if any other opportunities come up that you see that we'd be interested in educating ourselves, that'd be great. So there is a motion on the floor. Discussion, any additional discussion? Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
yes.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Lightfoot,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. And that motion prevails. Dan, thanks staff for their diligence in that, and it'll be good to see some of these things checked off of our lists. Council, any announcements? Okay, I have just a couple. Thursday, January 21st, 6:30, there's a Public Safety Advisory Commission meeting. Monday, January 25th, there is a Planning Commission meeting. And Monday, February 1st, is a City Council meeting at 7 p.m. I would accept a motion to approve. I'm sorry. Approve a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry. Councilmember Lund,
Second.
Councilmember Vaughn. No discussion. Clerk Flatten, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fulch,
Yep.
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Lightfoot,
Yes.
Councilmember Lund,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Fassbender.
Yes. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.